Now, the second key of the four keys is to keep the morale meter high. Let me explain what I mean by that. A morale meter is really just a way to describe how people feel about themselves. So if, you help people feeling good about themselves or bad about themselves, if you set it high, it really just means they feel good about themselves and you do things to help them to feel good about themselves. And if it's low, that you're just pulling people down all the time. Now, that might seem like, who cares? Get back to work. Stop telling me your problems. But actually, it makes a big difference. First, let me talk a little bit about arrogance versus confidence for a second. And that ties into the keeping the morale meter high. Have you ever met somebody who's really great at what they do, but you have no doubt about it that you would call them, and other people would call them, an arrogant person? And you've probably also met people who are really good at what they do, but you wouldn't label them as arrogant. You just think they were confident, and it didn't bother you as much. Now, the determinant of whether somebody's arrogant or confident really doesn't seem to be whether they're good or not. It really seems to be in the attitude that they have. So that intangible thing, the attitude, is really, really important. I think it's got a lot to do with their self-esteem. I think if somebody has low self-esteem, then they tend to be kind of negative. They tend to not feel good about themselves. And they tend to be really great at spotting problems without necessarily having a solution. They just can tell you everything that's wrong with something. If they have high self-esteem, they tend to have a different body language, a little more generous in their praise. That doesn't mean they give false praise. It just means they're a little more generous in the praise that they've got, and they don't have to worry about stealing credit. They share their credit easily and generally make people feel better about themselves. So I always talk about lizards and lions. And what I mean by that is, if you remember back when you were in grade, 3 or 4, when you learned about warm-blooded animals and cold-blooded animals, and as far as how they how they regulated their body heat, you probably remember that warm-blooded animals like humans, we can regulate our own body heat a lot better than a cold-blooded animal can. An alligator or a lizard or a snake, if they're too cold, they slow down and they have all kinds of things happen to them. So in order for them to warm up, they have to find another source of heat, whether it's the sun or something warm. And if they get overheated, they have to go seek out a cooler place. Whereas humans, we're affected by our external factors. Of course, if you go out in the wintertime without a jacket on, you're going to feel it. But within we're much less susceptible, and we can regulate ourselves. If somebody throws cold water on you, you'll shiver and your body temperature might temporarily cool off, but then you'll warm up again on your own. So with self-esteem, imagine if instead of body temperature, what if that was our level of self-esteem and how we regulate that for ourselves? The lions versus lizards idea is that a confident person can regulate their own self-esteem a lot better. They know who they are. They know that they're valuable. They have an intrinsic self-worth that can be affected by external sources. Someone could tell a confident person that they're no good, and temporarily that will affect that person. But if they have a solid sense of who they are, they'll get over it fairly quickly and understand that they're actually in a good place regardless of what somebody else says about them. Now, someone with low self-esteem really needs external sources to raise it, to regulate it. So if people aren't praising them all the time, they'll do things to seek out praise, insofar as saying things themselves, so that even by someone not disagreeing with them, that is some strange way of agreeing that they are really great, and that feeds their need to raise their self-esteem on their own or have an external source. So why should you even care about that? I think sometimes it's good to just understand the distinction between what we're doing to others and how we're affecting others, and if we're being arrogant or if we're being confident. I think that's pretty important, because why should you care? Well, someone with high self-esteem is easier to deal with. They're more productive. They are probably better at their work. So if you're working with someone, whether you report to them or they report to you, or you're just equally on the same level as colleagues, it's probably better to have people who feel good about themselves, and so you keep the morale meter high.
you.